So is a 5% yield a great return when buying an investment property? Keep in mind, if you're watching this video, you may live in one of the capital cities, okay, across Australia. If you're Melbourne or Sydney, the average yield in Melbourne and Sydney is around 3.5%, okay? So anything that is, you're getting a 5% yield on a freestanding house and above is amazing. If we look at Melbourne and Sydney, you got a medium house price of, $1 million plus. And a lot of those freestanding houses, the average yield is below, it's close to the 2% mark. Okay, so when it's a general 3.5% in Melbourne, which is the average yield, and across Sydney as well, that's including your apartments, your townhouses, and your houses. So you got so many different types of asset classes. When it comes to your freestanding houses, you'll be averaging around 2% in the two major capital cities in Australia. Okay, so when you look at a 5% yield on a residential property, freestanding house, okay, that is a strong yield. Okay, and just a 1% difference in yields on a property can increase the borrowing capacity for the future purchases. So clients sometimes fixate on a 6% yield or above, and they might say you need to get a high yield, which is fine, but there is a cap as well where most banks will stop looking at the yield. Okay, so they'll say at a 6% is their maximum they'll take on consideration on a property, and even if your property is yielding 7, 8 or 9 or 10%, they would not take that in consideration. Now there are some other banks out there, okay, so keep that in mind. There are other banks out there that will take in consideration if it's a 7, 8, 9, 10% yield. So, but the majority of the banks, especially the majors, they only go up to 6%. Now, so that's something to keep in mind, okay? And when you're looking at property, I think if you're getting a return of a 5% return and greater, you're doing extremely well. That property is going to look after itself. Okay, it might not be cash flow positive at the moment with the current interest rates, but it's not going to affect your lifestyle if it was compared to a 4, 3, or 2% interest. 2% yield on that property. So that is something to take into consideration. I think if you look long term on a property, the property yield will increase over time. So, for instance, I purchased the property at the moment, 5.8% it's yielding, but of course, over time, the property is going to increase in value, okay, when it comes to the rental income. And so, factoring around $20 to $30 extra per a year, that's going to increase your yield. So, I don't think you should be looking at just the here and now sometimes. I think if you're getting a good return on a property, okay, there's nothing wrong with that. We've got clients who have purchased in the high fours, when it comes to yield. So it's really, if you can afford it, I say to people, and the property is not going to put any pressure on your financial situation, I think the yield, it really does not matter. Now there is when I say that that's pros and cons, because it's depending on your circumstances. If you're watching this video, if you're someone that, depending on your income, is to say you got average income, which is around $80,000 to $100,000 in Australia, okay, and you're doing this solely on your own, you're investing on your own, okay, a yield can be quite important for you for the following purchase. Now, if you're someone that is a business owner, maybe you're earning, $200,000 plus, you're generating a lot of income, you're saving quite well, you haven't got, many expenses, then, a yield it may not be too important for you, and it's not going to really put too much pressure on you. So you can compromise a little bit on the yield. Okay, so certain people's circumstances, it all depends, and it depends on your property portfolio as well. Okay, so that's a big factor as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of clarity about the yields. 5%, 6%. Should I get 7%? I want to get 8% or 9%. I think it's just understanding your situation and what property selection you're picking and what suits you best, and what is that property going to do for you in the future. If I buy this property and it's not going to put any financial pressure on me, it's a growth asset, it still has a good yield, it's yielding in the 5s, but it's going to give me that growth that I'm targeting. I've done my due diligence, I know what I'm doing. This asset here, in 12 months time, I'm going to use it to leverage and get up into another property, and it's got the potential to add some value to it, or you've got a plan to add some value to it in the future, maybe renovations or something like that, or knock down a wall, maybe extend the property, or maybe you might want to develop on it. Whatever the circumstances are, you've got a goal, and that is understanding that goal, what the purpose of that property is. the number of the yield is it's not super important depending on the circumstances. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you take this and don't think, one size fits all. It's all depending on your circumstances. Okay, so property is quite funny, it's quite tedious, there's a lot to it. Property is a game of finance. That's what I put it down to. It's a game of finance, it's a game of having a plan in place, understanding what your plan is, and then executing on that and picking the right property. So hopefully that makes sense. If you would like to know more about certain things when it comes to yields, what sort of yield you should be chasing, or some advice on your personal situation, please just reach out to the team here at Fresh Start Advisory. Just message us here on the Facebook group. More than happy to actually have a conversation, point you even in the right direction, or even educate you. You'll be surprised how many people actually do come through, ask us questions, and say to me, Frank, what do you think about this? I'm looking at this, I'm not in a position to buy, or I'm in a position, but really I just want to get some advice, and I'm more than happy to give that advice. Of course, depending on your circumstances, it's just going to be a general advice, and I can't get a full understanding. But if you're wanting some personal advice and a full consultation, we can always organize something as well. So please don't be afraid, reach out to us. And if you got some value from this video, don't be shy to subscribe, and even share this video with other people out there, so you can empower other people and share this knowledge with them as well. So thank you guys, have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you next week.